Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something you've probably quietly suspected about yourself for a very long time. If you've ever felt like you just operate on a completely different frequency than the people around you, I want to start right off the bat by validating that for you. This lifelong feeling, it's not a flaw. It's actually a highly measurable psychological difference. Seriously, have you ever wondered why certain conversations just leave you feeling completely empty? Or why being in specific environments makes you want to literally disappear? Why do you so often feel out of sync with the world, like everyone else was handed a rule book at birth that you somehow missed out on? I really want you to let this sink in for a second. You are not broken. The isolation you might be feeling doesn't stem from some defect in your personality or a lack of capability. You aren't missing some essential social gene that everyone else has. The reality, you are structurally different. We're talking about the invisible architecture of a mind that is fundamentally measurably distinct. Psychology has known about this for a long time. And, it has absolutely nothing to do with test scores or bank accounts. It's entirely about how you process the world. Think about this fascinating psychological concept called the need for cognitive closure. For the average brain, uncertainty is basically physical agony. It's going to rush to grab the nearest available answer and seal it shut just to avoid ambiguity. This, by the way, totally explains why it can be so exhausting dealing with people who demand an instant answer to absolutely everything. But your mind? It likely scores very low on this scale. You don't rush for the exit. You actually thrive in ambiguity. You sit with questions, you turn them over, and you're completely comfortable just saying, hey, I don't know yet, without any panic whatsoever. Moving right along to Section 1, the invisible architecture, guarding your focus. Because your mind operates differently, it naturally has to protect itself differently. When you step out of the noise or avoid draining situations, that isn't antisocial. It's just cognitive self-preservation. Which brings us to Section 2, the past, metabolizing your deepest pain. This is crucial. We really need to understand how this unique psychological profile interacts with trauma, failure, and deep emotional difficulty. Look, when tragedy strikes, the average response is what we call pain absorption. This is where unprocessed pain embeds itself right into a person's identity. The pain literally becomes the lens for everything they do. But you do something incredibly rare. You metabolize pain. And let me tell you, it's hard work, not magic. You don't let the pain write the next chapter of who you are. Instead, you break it down, digest it, and transform it into absolute fuel. And this isn't just a fun, poetic metaphor. It is grounded in hardcore behavioral neuroscience. Enter your prefrontal cortex. This is the brain region responsible for perspective and emotional regulation. Instead of your nervous system just retreating from the hurt and shutting down entirely, this highly developed area of your brain activates to help you extract complex meaning from total devastation. It's amazing. So how does this internal alchemy actually happen? It's a very specific 4-step process. First, you actually allow yourself to feel the pain fully, no suppression. Second, you completely refuse to perform fake strength just to look composed for an audience. Third, you dig in and extract the hidden lesson. And finally, you transform that raw emotional experience into sharp, clear direction for your future. Research in emotional resilience shows us something fascinating. The people who emerge from tragedy the most intact aren't the ones who felt it the least. They're the ones who felt it the absolute most, and then they ask themselves this exact question. What did this teach me that nothing else could have? That takes us to Section 3, the present. Navigating profound emotional depth. Once you master metabolizing the past, it completely rewires how you navigate your day-to-day life right now. We really need to dismantle a persistent myth here, the idea that strong people somehow feel less. That couldn't be further from the truth. While many people perform their emotions, manufacturing tears or amplifying reactions just to be seen by the crowd, true psychological maturity looks like feeling deeply. It's holding a quiet, intense, almost private reservoir of emotion that never quite spills over for the public. It is masterclass emotional regulation. Actually, affective neuroscience backs this up beautifully. It reveals that the individuals who demonstrate the absolute highest emotional regulation are actually the most intensely feeling people alive. The most composed person in the room, they aren't feeling nothing. They are experiencing the world with extraordinary depth. They just refuse to be governed by it. They simply do not perform strength they don't have. They understand the rare difference between genuinely feeling an emotion and just putting on a performance.
They let themselves privately feel what the rest of the world rarely gets to witness. It's exactly why you might seem incredibly stoic during a crisis at work, only to process the sheer weight of it deeply when you're completely alone.
This kind of deep emotional privacy connects directly to having an internal locus of control. If you have this mind, your standard is entirely internal. You aren't desperately looking around for external applause or validation. You hold yourself to a private standard of quality that the world couldn't even measure if it tried. You're the one staying up late thinking about the problem no one else even noticed. Yes, it's exhausting, but it's exactly what makes your work so excellent.
All right, section 4, the future. Thinking in decades, not minutes. We've seen how this mind processes the past and the present. Now let's look at how this unique architecture structures time itself. There's a behavioral concept called delay discounting. Basically, most of humanity overvalues immediate rewards. They want the payoff right this second. But if you have this non-average mind, you have a totally different relationship with time. You're operating on a completely different temporal scale, which, let's be honest, often completely baffles everyone else around you who is just trying to survive until Friday. Most people operate on a 1 minute or maybe a 1 month scale. They constantly ask, what do I feel right this second? Or what's the absolute fastest path to a result? But you're out there thinking in years. You're operating in 5-year increments, holding your course in total silence while everyone else is pivoting constantly. You're thinking in decades, patiently waiting for quiet work to finally compound into a massive, visible reality. But because of that long-term horizon, we have to acknowledge a pretty painful reality. Because you're investing in work where the return is invisible for months or even years, you will often look like you are falling behind your peers. You'll look like you're doing less in the present moment simply because your vision is designed to show up across a lifetime, not just a weekend. Finally, section 5, integration, the power of not fitting. Let's pull all of this together, the past, present, and future, and talk about the absolute power of not fitting in.
For a really long time, you might have interpreted your inability to fit seamlessly into every room as evidence that something was broken. You probably asked, what is wrong with me? Treating your difference as a defect. But the real game changer happens when you change the question. You start asking, what is this trying to show me? You stop shrinking your mind to make others comfortable, and you start treating your unique frequency as vital data.
So, just to recap the core differences we've explored in this explainer, while the average mind desperately needs immediate closure, retreats from discomfort, and demands instant rewards, your mind lives completely comfortably inside ambiguity. It treats discomfort as extremely useful data, and it defers immediate applause for a long-term vision. All of this proves that what you thought was isolation is actually a highly developed psychological advantage. I want to leave you with this thought to really chew on. The lonely mind that moves at a different speed is the same thing that makes you irreplaceable. It is absolutely time to stop apologizing for the depth that exhausts people who only want to skim the surface. The very thing that made you feel lonely is exactly what makes you vital to the right people and the right conversations. So, what if you stopped wondering why you feel so different? And welcome